Well, shalom everyone, and welcome to Panim El Panim. That means face to face in Hebrew, and this is a podcast to just talk about Messianic Judaism and what we're all about, and who we are, what we've done, where we're going. So, very excited to just be here. By the way, I'm Joe. People call me Joyful Joe, and I'm going to interview a very special person. Named Patrick Marcus Vidito.
Went for the full name.
Yes, full name. Take what you got for that, but yes, should be fun. But we call him Mark around here. With a C, that's very important.
That's right. The C is very.
And he
important.
calls himself the Smiling Sheep too. We'll get to that. I'm
Yes,
very excited
we'll get
about
to
this.
that.
Cool. All right. So, Mark, shalom, and we're here at Messiah Conference.
Yes.
Last day, Shabbat, and it's been a great week, right?
It's been a fantastic week. In fact, this is I think it's like my 25th conference, maybe 26th.
Wow.
I've been coming since '93, and
Wow.
this to me, we'll probably talk about this, but 1998 was a red letter year for me, and I think that this conference has been the best conference since 1998.
Really?
Yeah.
So why is this conference different than all other conferences?
Conference.
Azeh.
I was very blessed and fortunate and privileged to work with the YMJA again, which
That's awesome.
I started serving the YMJA in 1995, helping out with the worship there. And then came on what we called then the planning committee, which they now call LT. There were 5 of us.
Whoa.
Now there's 15 or 14 or something like that.
Yeah.
And all those years I led the worship. Worship was my job. And this year they called me out of retirement to come back.
Back to the big leagues.
Back to the big leagues to come back and coordinate the worship for them. I only helped out actually leading worship a couple times.
Cool.
Once I was on the drums, and another time Hashir played.
Ooh.
And that was a nice little reunion for us because we haven't done anything in a while.
That's fun.
But I was able to coordinate the worship teams and just serve the YMJ in that capacity this year. So the worship team this year, specifically Augustine Weinberg and Simcha, just blow me away with not only their skill but their spirit.
Yes.
And YMJA night I was just basking in the beauty of it all. The young people just totally on fire and engaged, and the spirit of worship was just so pure, and it took me back to 1998 and exceeded that, I think, a little bit. So very excited.
That's awesome. Yeah, it was powerful. Mm-hmm. I wholeheartely agree. Augustine, Simcha, and that team at CBM Beth Messiah down in Houston, so anointed. Yeah. YMJA night was definitely my favorite night of conference. So
it's always my favorite night of conference.
Yeah, it's definitely it's louder. Some people said it's the loudest night of conference.
Well, one thing they do on YMJA night that you don't get to see on the live stream is they'll line YMJAers up at the door. And as people are coming in, they high five them, they cheer, so it's a completely different environment than the rest of the week.
It's this fresh energy that is just like bolted into the auditorium, which I love.
Right.
Love it. It's cool. So, talking a little bit more about your story too and the conferences. So tell me about your background, how you got into this thing we call Messianic Judaism, and I just want to hear all the things.
Okay.
Yeah.
It starts when I was 7 years old.
Okay.
My mom was a Baptist church planter's daughter, and she had a doctor. We had a doctor for my sister. Long story there, that was Jewish, Dr. Schiller. And my mom wanted to be really nice to this guy because he'd done so much for us, and she wanted to buy him a Christmas tree.
Whoa!
And he said, "Oh, that's so nice, but I don't do Christmas."
Not even a Hanukkah.
And, right, exactly. And it was the first time in my mom's life that she realized that the Jewish people don't just exist in the Bible. You know, she was raised in Southern Baptist Church world.
Sure.
And Southern Baptist Church world, back then especially, didn't pay attention to current Israel and the current Jewish people. So she was like, wait a second, hold on a second. The Jewish people are still here. And that means all the promises in the scriptures are still for them. So she started asking all these questions to the rabbis, the non-Messianic rabbis in town.
Sure.
She hadn't heard of Messianic Judaism. And they got so annoyed with her that they finally sent her to, I'm not sure if they sent her to Michael Wolf in Cincinnati at that time, or Aaron Bortz, who was a Messianic believer, also from Cincinnati, but was in Louisville, Kentucky, where we lived at the time.
So cool.
So at 7 years old, I went to Aaron Bortz's house and had my very first Passover Seder.
Oh, fun.
Fast forward to ages around 10 or 12, and my parents had at that time joined forces with another couple in our area who had a similar heart for the Jewish people, and we had a tiny little Messianic Bible study in our living room.
Nice.
And we would go once every month, once every 2 months to spend a weekend at Mike Wolf's congregation in Cincinnati.
Oh, great.
So we would go to Mike Wolf's on Friday, and then Jeff Adler's, he also had a congregation there at the time, on Saturday.
Oh, cool.
And that was my first foray into synagogal life, was Mike Wolf, and my first Messianic friends were Josiah and Yoni, who now go by Gemini, and Josiah's Gemini, and Yoni is the band Y. But they were my first Messianic friends. I'd sleep at their house, and we'd go to the comic book shop after services together. And
Oh, fun.
So I'm gonna take a break from my Messianic journey to just talk about my general spiritual journey.
Sure, love that.
In my teen years, life was falling apart. And without getting, airing the laundry in perpetuity here, my family was falling apart. My parents were really starting to struggle together. We had moved so much. I was in middle school and was getting bullied a lot. So did not have a fun life there. And I remember one year, we would do Shabbat dinner together, and my mom and dad were still trying to put this Messianic fellowship together.
Sure.
We had moved to having Saturday services at that point, and out of the home, and we're renting a place. And my mom one year she announced that we were going to do Hanukkah instead of Christmas.
Oh, wow.
Now, to me, as a child, Christmas, I never believed in Santa Claus. You couldn't pull the wool over my eyes. I just never believed it.
Oh, wow, all right. That's
but
good.
Christmas carols, the beauty of the tree, everything.
Yeah.
It was the most magical time of year.
Yeah.
For me. It was the time when everybody who might be at each other the rest of the year, they got along.
Yeah.
There's
a lot more peace there.
A lot of peace.
Yeah.
And I was already struggling with the things that my parents wanted me to do anyway.
Yeah.
But when she wanted to get rid of Christmas one year, that was it. I didn't want to have anything to do with this Messianic Jewish stuff. I didn't want to have anything to do with the synagogue,
And of course, that was at a time where Hanukkah was a lot less commercialized.
That's very true. We're talking the 80s.
Yeah, we it wasn't the competition between Christmas, Hanukkah, Christmas, etc.
Right. That's true. It wasn't. So throughout my middle teenage years, with the turmoil that I was going through, and being dead set against whatever my parents had in mind, anything they wanted to do, I was against it, I really lost sight of God. I was also suicidal at that time. I dealt with a lot of depression, a lot of angst, and just a lot of suicidal thought, and some self-harm even. And the thing that stopped me was I knew, even though I didn't care for God and I didn't like this messianic stuff, I knew that on the other side of that decision to commit suicide, I was going to face God.
Sure.
And what was he going to say? And that kept me alive. Honestly, that kept me alive.
That's powerful.
7th grade was just a hellish year, really. And my parents knew that, and I was failing every class, and it was just a very dark time. And my parents enrolled me into a small, tiny Christian school, Faith Christian Academy in central Kentucky, in Bardstown, Kentucky. And there I met not only believers who I really trusted as believers. For the first time, I saw no hypocrisy in these believers. But more specifically, I met the principal of the school, Neil Barnes. And Neil Barnes was not a cool guy. He was a very fundamental Christian, was not hip with the kids, He was not cool. But man, he was authentic. And he was the real deal. And he saw something in me that I guess he saw my potential. Not only potential to do things, but to potential to be someone that God loved and cared for. And he challenged me daily to really read Scripture, to memorize Scripture. We memorized chapters of Scripture in that school. And he challenged me daily to look at God and my relationship with him. Look at God not just as my friend, but as sovereign, as real, and my relationship with him. And that was the beginning of my turning back to the Lord.
It's so game changing. And even in Messianic Judaism, we take this so much for granted. We say Avinu Malkeinu all the time. Well, like thinking about God as Father and God as King is just like, it's mind numbing. It's really, it's a beautiful thing. He loves the intimacy, but he's sovereign as well. So it's really cool to hear about that experience. I love that.
So I guess that carried me through. I went to that Christian school. I didn't learn anything academically there. I learned how to memorize all the answers and cheat on all the tests. But
Star student.
That's right. I was a star student. But while I was doing that, I was also making believing friends who really loved me and cared for me, and understanding that there was a God who cared for me. So
that's awesome.
So fast forward to my junior year of high school. Suffice it to say, there was a lot of tension in the home. My parents were fighting, and I was fighting with my parents. It was falling apart between my parents, and it was. I describe it as we were 4 people living in the same house together.
Yikes.
And at the end of my junior year, my dad decided that he was going to exit the family. About a month later, again, without getting into the nitty-gritty of things, I came home from school one day and packed a bag and climbed out my window and went to a friend's house and slept on their couch for the summer. So between junior year and senior year, I was living on a friend's couch. My dad was finding a place to live, and my mom and sister were left to their own devices and decided to move then to Philadelphia to be part of Congregation Beth Yeshua.
Oh, okay.
But in that time, I really, that summer, I really took the time to take stock of my life and of what I believed. And I came to this conclusion through much prayer, much study, a lot of time in the Word and in study. The cosmos is not there by happenstance. The mechanics of the eye are proof that we are fine-tuned, that we live in a fine-tuned creation.
Yes.
And if there is a creation, then there had to be a creator.
Yes.
It was too fine-tuned to be an evolutionary happenstantial thing. Okay, so there is a God.
Yes.
What other God in any of the other religions, and I was open to them all, what other God has made promises, has through his people uttered prophecies that then were kept in a verifiable account, scripture, that was then quantified by external historical data and archaeological findings?
Yes. I love that.
So there is a God. He has to be the God of the Tanakh.
Yeah.
Has to be. That's the only religious system that has claims that have been kept and scientifically verified. If he's the God of the Tanakh, then there are promises in the Tanakh of a Messiah.
Right.
And there's only one person who has fulfilled all of the promises that needed to be fulfilled before 70 AD when the temple was destroyed.
So good, yeah.
And that was Yeshua, Jesus, the Messiah.
Yes.
So, I came at that age, we're talking about 17 here, to believe in the Judeo-Christian God through the Jewish context. And so to me, it only made sense to live a Messianic Jewish lifestyle. As a Gentile, my God was the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. My Messiah was Yeshua, the Jewish Messiah. And so my life had to reflect that and follow the scriptures that he gave us.
Okay, so you just said Messianic Gentile, like living a Messianic Jewish life. So this was, how long was that when you did that single? And then when did you meet your wife?
When did I meet Dara?
When did you meet your future wife?
So that was the summer of 1992. In the fall of 1992, I went to the Midwest Regional Conference in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Yes.
For the previous years, I had been dragged there by my parents, kicking and screaming, didn't want to have anything to do with it. That year, my parents weren't there.
Yes.
And I went on my own.
Oh, wow.
I met Kevin Solomon, a young Kevin Solomon, who had just become the president of the YMJA and was leading the regional conferences. I met Kevin Solomon at the registration table. And even though I was 17 and was thinking, I don't want to go to this kid stuff, he convinced me, just come tonight to our first meeting and just get to know other youth.
That's hilarious.
So I met Kevin Solomon, who was not a rabbi then.
Yeah.
2 hours later, I went into the meeting,
Yeah.
and I saw this girl, and as I have always said in the story, the rest of the world just kind of melted, and I said to Josiah Wolf, "Who is that?" And it was little Dara Grucheski from Indianapolis.
Yes.
And that weekend, we became good friends, and I didn't have a youth group in my Messianic fellowship.
Mm-hmm.
I was the only person between ages 5 and 50. And they lived 2 hours north, so about every 2 months, I would go spend a weekend with them, and they adopted me into their youth group.
Love
That's how I met both Kevin and Dara, 2 hours from each other.
2 hours from
30
each
years
other.
ago. 31 years ago.
And then destiny just changed because you're still serving. Under RK, Rabbi Kevin, and still married to Dara, and yes, happily married. It's amazing. That is so cool to hear. So eventually, I just know from talking with you that you made your way over to Philly.
Yeah. So
is there anything that happened between?
I had graduated high school. I had become good friends with Dara and had a huge crush on her.
Yeah.
And I was planning on moving to Indianapolis. I was going to go to school there. I was going to start my life there. I wanted to be close to them.
Yeah.
This was the first time that God spoke to me. This was the first time God spoke. No, this was the second time God spoke to me. Ask me about the first time in a minute.
Okay.
Well, the second time God spoke to me, I was having my quiet time with the Lord.
Yeah.
And God specifically said, "You know you're moving to Philadelphia, right?" And I said, "Nope, wrong number. Hang up." First of all, my mom was in Philadelphia.
That's right.
And to say we didn't have a good relationship is a vast understatement.
Oh, yeah.
I did not really want to have anything to do with, "I love you, Mom." But at that time, and she knows this, we had a horrible relationship, and I didn't want to have anything to do with her.
Right.
So it wasn't that I was moving to Philly to be with my mom.
Yeah.
That was a deterrent.
Right.
But I'm going to go back to the first time God spoke to me because it's germane. So over the winter break of 1992, right after I met Dara and Kevin, I felt like God wanted me to go visit my mom in Philly. And I didn't want to. And I said, "This is not going to go well. I don't want to have anything to do with this."
Yeah.
I took a Greyhound bus for 18 hours from Louisville, Kentucky to Philly. And within half an hour before we got home from the Greyhound station, she and I got in this huge fight in the car. And I got out at a stoplight and just started walking downtown. Well, not downtown, but West Philly.
Yeah.
Didn't know where I was going.
Man.
Just started walking. Just got out of the car. And I'm complaining. I'm like, "God, I am trying, I am doing my best. I'm trying to correct my relationship with you, with everybody. I'm trying to live a godly life. I told you coming here was going to be a bad idea. I didn't want to have anything to do with this. And then I started on the old rant. Why did you put me in this family? I didn't ask for this family. I didn't ask for this life. Da 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 da.
So you had a Jonah moment.
I had a Jonah moment.
Very much a Jonah moment.
And I somehow I found a payphone, and she told me her address, and somehow I got to her house. And I go in, I slam the door, and to the bedroom that I was staying in, and I'm continuing to complain. I'm just letting God have it for the whole thing. And he interrupts me. This is the first time he spoke to me. He interrupts me, and he says, and I quote, "Cut him some slack." And I said, "What?"
Wow.
He said, "Cut him some slack. Just like you're a first-time kid, they're first-time parents." And that revolutionized the way that I saw my parents.
Changes everything.
Instead of being entitled and them owing me good things, they were doing the best they could. And I needed to have grace for them in that.
Yes.
And it shut me up, and it stopped me in my tracks when he said that. And I kind of went to sleep speechless that night. And then the next morning I got up and I went out and I apologized to my mom. And we had a great time. And we didn't talk through things. We had a great time. I went back home to Louisville.
Yeah.
My dad was about to kick me out of the house because we were fighting all the time. I had, in that few months after as I started senior year of high school, he had gotten an apartment and invited me in, and I looked at it as a roommate situation. Sure. I didn't respect him as my dad. Sure. This was a roommate situation. I'm gonna live by my own rules. He had a different idea, and I didn't want to have anything to do with that either. So he was about to kick me out. But I come back, and I'm a different person. And a week later, he sat me down, and he said, "Who are you, and what have you done with my son?" And I explained to him what had happened.
Yes.
And so we lived together in that apartment for the next year and a half, I guess, after that. And it was a healing time for me and my dad.
Yes, that's amazing.
So while I'm living there, God tells me, "You know you're moving to Philadelphia, right?" And fighting and screaming, I eventually acquiesced and said, "Okay, I'm giving up everything. I love Dara. My friends are all in Indianapolis. My future and my hope," from Jeremiah 29:11, "are in Indianapolis."
Yeah.
And God said, "No, your future and your hope are in Philadelphia."
Mm.
And so I went. And I'm going to tell you where the smiling sheep came from.
Yes, please do. I'm so curious.
So I went to Philly, and within a few months, the Jeff Foreman was the assistant rabbi there at that time, and he approached me and asked me if I would like to be the custodian, janitor for Beth Yeshua.
Yes.
And I was a nobody. I was this hillbilly kid from Kentucky.
Yeah.
I was a nobody.
Yeah.
And he asked me to be the custodian. So I quit my job, my prestigious job as the drive-through personality of McDonald's. Howdy McMorning, how can I help you today?
Howdy McMorning.
That'll be one egg McMuffin and a cup of coffee, $2.35, and that's no jive. See you at the first window.
Oh my goodness. That's amazing.
I got 2 job offers through the drive-through window at McDonald's.
Really?
Didn't take them. One was my first voiceover job, and I did take it, selling monster trucks. But anyway, that's another story.
You and Rabbi Kevin have a lot
in
common with the radio thing and for him and voiceover for you. That's incredible.
So I was the janitor at Beth Yeshua, and again, was finally getting my life right with the Lord.
That's good.
I had friends who were in Odessa, Ukraine, at one of Jonathan's first festivals.
Jonathan Burness, right?
Yep. Summer of 1995. Yeah, summer of 1995, July of 1995. I was scrubbing scuff marks off the wall and listening to Keith Green.
Ooh.
I grew up on Keith Green, second chapter of Acts.
Such good stuff.
And I was praying for my friends that were in Odessa. I was praying, God, set up divine appointments, work through them, work in them, do miraculous things through them, do miraculous things in their lives. But on top of that was this jealousy. God, hineni. I want to be there. I want to do this. I want to serve the world, you know.
Yes.
And as I was praying that, I listened to Keith Green's musical retelling of the parable of the sheep and the goats. Have you heard it?
Yes. Oh my gosh.
And at the end of that musical rendition, Keith Green says, "The only difference between the sheep and the goats, according to Scripture, is what they did and didn't do." And that cut through me like a knife. I was like, I can't be a believer in word only. I got to be a doer. I got to be a doer. And I prayed, God, Hineni, I want to make a difference.
Yeah.
And he spoke to me a third time. He's spoken to me 4 times that I can think of. This was number 3. He said to me, "How many homeless people do you see every day?" And that was it. That was all he said.
Yeah.
And bing, eyes opened. I used to take the L, the subway, the elevated train down to South Street, and I spent so much time just walking around Philly.
Sure.
And, you know, you can't go a block without seeing 3 homeless people in Philly.
Yeah.
And it just, that one question was an epiphany for me, and opened me up to the reality that I didn't have to go to Odessa to start making a difference. I could make a difference in the lives around me in my own backyard.
That's so good.
So the very next week, Matt Moskal, I don't know if you have even heard the name
here.
Matt Moskal. He's here.
Yes.
Matt Moskal was the Bonnie to my Clyde, or the Clyde to my Bonnie. He was the Laurel to my Hardy. You know, he was just on fire for the Lord. Man, what a genuine on fire guy. He was Keith Green at that time.
Oh man.
And I went to Matt and I said, "We're going to go downtown. We're going to take Lunchables and little booklets of the Gospel of John, and we're just going to find homeless people and spend time with them."
Oh.
So the very next Sunday in July, I don't remember what the exact date was, but it was Super Sunday when they had in front of the Art Museum in Philadelphia all these booths and everything set up. Well, Beth Yeshua had a booth set up. We were doing some singing and dancing and da-da-da.
Yeah.
After Super Sunday was over, Matt and I, we just prayed, "God, just send us." And we just started walking. We didn't even know where we were going.
Sure.
For the first 2 hours, I spent time with these 3 guys. I don't remember 2 of them, but one of them's name was Terrence. And they were living behind a building, literally in cardboard boxes and refrigerator boxes.
Wow.
Literally living in these boxes. I spent 2 hours with them, and I went with this idea that I had something to offer besides Lunchables and the Gospels of John, you know? Yes. And I gave them the Lunchables, I gave them the Gospels of John, and I started trying to share with them.
Yeah.
But I was saying it in my, forgive me, but my church vernacular, you know?
Yeah.
My religious vocabulary.
Yes.
And it wasn't getting through to 2 of them. But Terrence was a strong believer. He had gotten shot out on the street. When he woke up in the hospital, he knew that God was giving him a second chance, and he turned his life over to the Lord. And I learned in those 2 hours that I didn't have all the answers. I wasn't going to blank slates. These were people with stories. And I would say some sort of biblical truth in my church vernacular.
Yeah.
And Terrence would translate it into street talk. You know, for a lack of better terms. He translated it into something that these other guys could understand.
That's amazing.
And I learned more from listening to Terrence talk about God in those 2 hours than they learned anything from me. You know?
Come on.
So Matt and I went forth, and we got rid of every box of Lunchables.
Yes.
We had a few Gospels of John left, but we were done. This was now about 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
We were headed home. We're walking by, and I was done. I was spent. You know, I had done what I wanted to do, and learned what I thought I needed to learn.
Sure.
We were walking by the Greyhound station, and for some reason back then, I looked like a pretty shady character, but people are always trying to buy drugs from me, even though I never even smoked pot.
Oh, man, wow.
Never even smoked a cigarette. And we walk by these 3 people at the Greyhound station, and tall African-American guy, kind of whispers out, hey, you got any sheets? You know, he's asking for acid.
Of course.
And I said, no, I don't have any sheets. And I just kept walking. And then I said probably the corniest thing that I've ever said in ministry at all. I thought for a second, I turned back around, I said, yeah, I got some sheets. And I pulled out a Gospel of John. And he looked at me, he took it, he said, oh man, I thought you had some acid. No, but I got this. And we start sharing with them. Well, to make the longer story short, from the Greyhound station to the Wendy's, which was right around the corner, we picked up 20 homeless. We didn't have any more Lunchables, but we picked up 20 homeless people, including a mixed family with a little boy that I think had Down syndrome. And we took them to Wendy's.
You bought them Wendy's.
We took them to Wendy's. We put tables together.
Love it.
And here's a miracle, a little feeding the 5,000 miracle.
Sure.
Matt was Keith Green, but he's always been a kind of a funny character, you know?
Yeah. I can see that.
And part of his funniness was we were at Wendy's, we were feeding these people, and he was like, I don't want Wendy's, I want McDonald's, which was right around the corner. So he goes to McDonald's.
Yeah.
Well, he sees these two guys sitting outside of McDonald's, and they ask him for money. He didn't have any.
Sure.
But he's at McDonald's, he says to the manager, hey, I'm going to buy a couple extra burgers for these guys that are sitting out front. And the manager says, buy them? Here, we're about to close down. We're going to throw all these away. He comes back with two other homeless people and two full big bags of burgers from McDonald's that he didn't pay for.
That's amazing.
So we're sitting there in Wendy's. The manager's like, what are these people doing? We're sitting there in Wendy's. Here's the thing. We did not say, you're a sinner, you're going to hell, you know.
Right.
We didn't do anything. We gave out the last few Gospels of John that we had, but we just fed them.
Yeah.
And at the beginning, after we got the food, we sat down, and I asked them if I could pray for them.
That's awesome.
And I just prayed for them. And that was it. And then, as we were eating together, one of the guys says to me, why are you doing this? And I said, my Messiah loves me, and I want to love you with his love. And then they started asking questions, and we started sharing and said salvation prayers with some of them, and you know. And that was the beginning of the smiling sheep. The smiling sheep comes from Matthew 25, verses 31 through 46. And the idea is that I, at the end of my life, want to go the way of the sheep, not the goats.
Yes.
And I want to hear God say, well done, my good and faithful servant.
Love that.
God gives you the desires of your heart. I gave him the little that I had then. A year later, I was in Kharkov with Jonathan Burness doing what I had prayed to do in the first place. Then Holland, then Israel, then Canada, and all these places, Moldova.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, because from what I know of your story, you seem to be so instrumental, no pun intended there, about those JPMI festivals with Jonathan and Kol Simcha and Marc Dayan and all those other amazing people.
Yeah, it was a blessing. I got to go with Kol Simcha to Kharkov, to the only festival that didn't happen because they shut us down everywhere we went. I could tell you stories about that I won't tell. And then I went with the YMJA to Moldova. That was in Philadelphia, because I said yes to go to Philadelphia. All these things happened. Because I said yes to go to Philadelphia, I started leading worship. I started leading the youth. I started serving the YMJA. I've been on over a dozen albums at this point.
Yeah.
And all that started in Philadelphia, with Kol Simcha, with Kathy Schuster, with MJP. Do you know MJP? You know everything there is to know about Messianic music. Do you know MJP?
So Candace told me a little bit about this. So was this with Joshua Shaftel?
Joshua Shaftel, Bat Rivka, who was just Rivka back then.
Yes.
Ron Nevison, who is not around anymore.
Okay.
And Matt Moskal. Matt Moskal was the leader of MJP, Messianic Jewish Preachers. That was the first album that I was on. And we went into a studio, and it was bad. It was Messianic hip hop from a bunch of Jewish white guys. It was bad.
Oh,
it was bad, but it was legendary.
I so want to hear this right now. Like
you need to find it. It's only on cassette.
Oh,
and I have no idea where you would be able to find it. But I think Rabbi Kevin has a copy actually.
Oh my, I am so cute. Oh man, wow, Messianic hip hop. I mean,
Messianic hip hop.
I know of Hazakim, and those guys are.
Oh,
amazing.
We were not Hazakim. Whatever Hazakim is, we were the opposite end of that. We were like Vanilla Ice was more legit than we were, you know.
MJP, okay. That's gonna be in the archives somehow.
In the archives.
I'm gonna go on a hunt, but
I'm gonna have to hunt and put that on as a clip at the end of this interview.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to ask our Rabbi Kevin about that. Okay, cool. MJP from the hood of Philadelphia.
That's right.
What David Chernoff calls the city of brotherly shove.
The city of brotherly shove. Philadelphia.
Philadelphia. That's a good one. I remember.
Gem steaks, not Pat's.
I was about to ask that. Yes.
Gem steaks.
Was there a cheesesteak this year? I think I don't even know if there was cheesesteak at Messiah Conference this year.
I don't think there was, but
Really?
there's a place 10 minutes from here called Philadelphia Steaks and Hoagies, and it's every bit as good as Jim's.
Okay.
Now you know.
Yes, useful information from Messiah College here, or university. Okay, so Philly days, and you did not stay put in Philly.
I didn't.
Which I'm curious about because the Lord said you were going to Philly.
He said I was going to Philly, and I did the things that I needed to do in Philly.
Yeah.
And I got the grounding that I needed to have in Philly. And then over that time, Dara and I were developing our friendship.
So Dara moved out there?
Dara was still in Indianapolis.
Okay.
But we constantly talking on the phone. Visiting as much as we could, seeing each other at Messiah Conference as much as we could.
Nice.
And I'll tell you what happened. It was, she got into a car accident with her friend Holly.
Ooh.
And it was a bad car accident.
Yeah.
Car was totaled. Holly had glass all in her face and everything. And it scared me.
Yeah.
And it was at that moment that I realized I would not want to live without Dara. And that was when I decided that, we needed to be together.
Yeah.
So we dated for a year that I was in Philly, and she was in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
But I knew that in order for it to go anywhere, I needed to move to where she was,
Sure.
By the way, with my parents, God did so much healing between me and my mom at that time, my mom and I, and between my dad and I. And now we have a fantastic relationship. My parents, they are still not together, but we have a little group chat between my mom, my dad, and my sister. And it's fun banter back and forth. We have a great relationship now.
That's good. Yeah,
praise God. So 5 years to the day, February 28th of 1999, I moved from Philly to Indianapolis, where I was born, to be with Dara. We were there. We dated for another 4 years, and then we're married. No, dated for 3 years, and then we're married. We were leading the youth there, leading worship there. We both had good jobs there.
And this is Shari Yeshua?
This is, I can't remember what the name of the synagogue. Back then it was Ahavat Yeshua.
Okay, and it was Jeff Adler? Or?
It was Jeff Adler's congregation.
Oh, cool, okay.
Yeah. Tangentially, like the congregation in Louisville started in my living room, that one started in Dara's living room.
Oh, wow, all right.
Living room with her mom.
Love that.
So about 9 months into our marriage, our first year of marriage. We bought a house. We were just painting it the way that we wanted it. We were just settling in, and Kevin Solomon, who was not rabbi yet, calls and offers us the job as youth leaders at Beth Hillel in Georgia. And my Lech Lecha is my favorite Torah portion.
Oh,
God says, go. Lech Lecha is not just go, it's go and get going.
Get up and go.
Like, do it now, you know?
No time to waste.
And that's been my life. When God calls, Hineni, Lech Lecha, let's get going.
Love it.
So, as much as I did not want to move, I felt settled really for the first time in my life. God called, and we picked up everything. And moved down to Georgia. We lived for the first 10 months in Kevin and Tiffany's basement. The highlight was the Super NES that they had that Dara would play countless hours of Super Mario Brothers on.
Amazing.
And that's, we've been there for 21 years now as the youth leaders, worship leaders. Yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah, and I bet you've seen a lot of changes at your congregation. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Sure. I think COVID was the biggest change that we've seen in 21 years. As youth leaders, you have I see us as congregational leaders. The youth are our small congregation within a larger congregation.
Totally.
We have to be in line with the value systems and principles of the larger congregation.
Absolutely.
But we're really running a small congregation. When we moved there, we had 30 to 40 high schoolers in our youth group. Now, as youth group leaders, every 2 years, as high school youth group leaders, every 2 years you have a completely different congregation.
Absolutely.
Because every 2 years you have replaced half of your congregants, your youth group, with freshmen that have come in, and you've lost seniors that have moved out. And so it's every 2 years you're reinventing the group dynamics.
Sure.
So that's been a lot of change.
Yeah,
and we've had to learn to flow with that. Candidly, it was really challenging for me. It became really challenging for me in a season to invest pour my heart into these kids, and then as it's supposed to happen, they move on, but you've just given your heart to these kids and they move on. And that was a challenge to learn how to deal with what is a healthy evolution in their life. But yeah, there's been a lot of change. The biggest change, though, was COVID. I remember my eldest had her bat mitzvah, and 2 weeks later, the world shut down.
Yeah, I remember seeing that.
We were not prepared. We did not. People had been saying live stream for years, and we just didn't have the bandwidth to do it.
Sure, it's a lot.
But then we were forced into it, just like everybody else was. There was one weekend where there was no Beth Hillel services. The next weekend, just like this, we had the iPhones set up, the lighting set up. We had people coming in to lead services for a congregation that was not there, a skeleton crew. And we had to jump, just like everybody else did, we had to jump into a platform that none of us knew anything about or were prepared for, So that was the biggest change that I've seen. And, there's stylistic changes in music, and there's the change from Rabbi Robert Solomon to Rabbi Kevin. That's a big difference. But the biggest change was COVID.
Yeah, and a lot of fruit bearing as well with that too.
Oh yeah.
Because it seems like you guys get lots of hits on your YouTube channel. And you guys have amazing music. I mean, those weeks when Hashir is playing, it's just like
It's
so
special
beautiful
for us.
It's really special for everyone. I mean, yeah, it's beautiful to see. I think it's only helpful for the message of Messianic Judaism, just to grow and just to be out there. So, yeah, check them out at Bethel YouTube channel.
Bethel.org, the YouTube channel. Yeah.
That's amazing. So now we are in 2023. We survived COVID. We did all the things. What are you looking forward to the most? What are things looking like right now? I know you have this amazing project coming out. They call them Yeshua.
Yep.
Just really would love to hear what you're doing in ministry and otherwise.
Okay, so yeah, we can. I guess we can end on that note, which is that in 2023 we had the Asbury Revival Awakening, whatever it was, and the snapshot of that was that February 8th, some of the students responded to a routine chapel service that went at least 332 hours, at least 2 weeks, a little bit beyond 2 weeks. And in that 2 weeks, tens of thousands of people from all over the world, including myself and a small group from Bethel that I took, went to Asbury to see this move of God. Was it widespread revival? Jury's out.
Yeah.
But there's no question that it was a move of God.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for me personally, it has changed my life. We'll see what that change does in 5-10 years.
Yeah.
But for me personally, it reminded me of the Jesus movement that I caught just the tail end of when my parents went to college when I was 4 years old. It reminded me of those days, of the days of Keith Green, the days of second chapter of Acts. And so I just had this hunger to hear people's testimonies.
Sure.
I just wanted to hear people's testimonies. I asked my dad, my aunt, people in my family, what's your testimony,
Yeah.
And one of the testimonies that I wanted to hear was Michael and Rachel Wolf. Because I love them. It was my first rabbi.
Yes.
I love them to death.
Incredible people.
Before I got on the phone with them that weekend, I went and saw the Jesus Revolution movie.
Oh, great film. Yes.
Cried all the way through it. Every time Lonnie Frisbee led someone to the Lord, I was just bawling my face off. You know?
Yeah.
Just had a heart for revival. And I'm not a revival follower, really. Sure.
But I also think that there's a beauty between the connection of the Jesus Revolution movie and the Asbury Revival just coming out around the same time.
Yeah.
It was so cool to see. It's that wasn't planned.
Right. Yeah. That wasn't planned, but it was a God thing, obviously.
Yeah, totally.
So I get on the phone with Michael and Rachel Wolf just to hear their testimony. Yeah. And about 15 minutes in, I'm like, what in the world am I doing? This is not a phone conversation. Yeah. This is a project. This needs to be archived. This needs to be recorded. And then I started thinking about the fact that 40% of the people that came to faith in the Jesus movement were Jewish. Yeah. And many of those Jewish people were Jan Moskowitz, Stuart Dowerman, Joel Chernoff, David Chernoff. All of these people, David Stern, Martha Stern, all of these people that came to faith and then created out of Hebrew Christianity, which of course started in the late 1800s. Yes. Out of that, created what we know today as Messianic Judaism. We were no longer just a Jewish part of the church. We had our synagogal life. Right. We had our Messianic ministries that specifically reached out to our Jewish people. And all of that really began in the 60s and 70s. So I wanted to capture those stories, not just in written form. I thought of a book first. Then I was like, well, I actually want to hear it in their voices. Yeah. And then people were asking, is there going to be a video element? I was like, okay. So let's film these interviews so that we can see the faces of the people that are telling us their stories. And the idea is we'll capture the stories of the pioneers so that the next generation of pioneers can hold on to that pioneering spirit and take us where God wants us to go in this next move of God. So that's what they called him Yeshua is all about.
That is so cool. And yeah, I'm personally looking forward to hearing more stories. It's incredible to see what's out there already too, with all the different testimonies from I Found Shalom and One for Israel and what they're doing over there. So it's really cool to see that there's more. And definitely really cool. Well, is there anything else that you want to add? Anything that you want to encourage?
I guess I'll just say what my catchphrases. I learned along the way that God is God with or without my faith in him. He doesn't need my faith in him to be who he is.
Yeah.
So are you going to get on board or are you not? And then secondly, I believe it's 1 Corinthians 12:7 talks about the gifts that God has put in every person. I believe that every person out there, young and old, has a Jeremiah 29:11-13 plan, future for their life, and 2 Corinthians 12:7 gifts that God wants to awaken in you. And that's I just want to see people reach their God-given potential.
Yeah, God doesn't need much. And even when you mentioned Asbury, it was just a guitar and voices and that kind of thing.
Right.
He can work so mightily. So
yeah,
I love it. Well, okay, so make sure to like and subscribe and do all the things that you need to do. Share it on your social media. And this has been Panim al Panim, Panim Ziponim, and shalom skis, and talk to you later.
Yeah, thanks.